A high-pitched cry for help by problematic / Lana on AO3. Chapter 6. Slipping Through the Cracks. Izuku didn't leave his house for 5 days straight. He wasn't exactly sure why he was so scared of the pro talking to him. He just wasn't ready for him to treat him like everyone else. The Quirkless might be kind to him because they understood, but he didn't know if the pro would still want his drawings if he knew. If he really knew. If he had to be honest with himself, Izuku would admit to not being able to recognize his own feelings. Most of the time, he did just fine ignoring them or not labeling them. But now there was a sudden feeling he could remember once. The feeling of loss. It was silly, he rationalized. He knew that very clearly. You couldn't really miss something you never had. But getting to take a smile out of the hero with his drawings was something he really cherished. It created a bubbly feeling in his chest that made him smile. Izuku wanted to make everyone smile, and that made him remember he wanted to be a hero. Right. He wanted to be a hero, and heroes were really brave. Heroes didn't hide when their cover got blown. Izuku had to be brave. He had to give his drawings to him, and maybe if he was brave enough, he would go to school too. He really hated school now. Kachan's powers were getting more powerful by the minute, and Izuku's body could feel the strain it would take when he saw his classmates' eyes. Most of them instigated that Bakugo showed them his power. Some even brave enough to join the beatdown. By now, there were no other kids that had it so bad against them, and although it wasn't easy, Izuku didn't want other kids to become their targets because he was missing school. He could take it, for Bakugo's learning, and the safety of the other kids. He could turn his curse on someone's blessing. At least like that, the quirkless, useless Deku would have some worth. If he could make a hero smile, that would give him some worth too, right? That day, Izuku decided to do the bravest thing he could think of. He ripped a page of his hero analysis notebook and kept it in his fingers. One of his favorite pages, for sure. He wanted to show two things. He wanted the hero to know how he admired him, to the point that he thought of things he could do to improve, and secondly, he wanted to show the hero what really defined Izuku. And if he thought it was creepy, as people often did, and ran away, well, he would be heartbroken, but at least would be able to anticipate the blow before it got too strong. He didn't want to trust. Before he could gather the courage to get out of his very dark and incredibly dirty house, he heard a noise. Steps that usually would be quite hard to catch were unbelievably loud. He got nervous. There was a reason why a pro hero was assigned this part of the city as their patrol, that being how dangerous it could be at night. Would a thief be so loud? The sound stopped. Izuku opened the front door without really thinking, curiosity getting the best of him. And the lock had been broken for weeks now, so it wasn't safe anyways. The light of the common area of his apartment complex hit him like a hammer. He really had been in complete darkness the last few days. After a few seconds of adapting to it, some tired and alerted black eyes watching him with caution, hands rising in the air as proving innocence. Immediately panicking at the sight of the last person he wanted to see, face to face, he froze. His heart rate skyrocketed, and his breathing irregular. His poor green eyes, a mix of fear and shock. His throat suddenly felt so dry and felt as if air evaporated as it happened when he was really stressed. Why was he here? Why did he know where he lived? The man in front of him moved slowly, as if treating an injured animal. He opened his mouth and formulated a sentence. But there was nothing to listen to. No sound came out. Both seemed confused by this, and before anything could happen, Izuku made the sign for leave and closed the door on his face. The green little kid hid himself behind the door as his hands trembled. He began pulling his greasy hair with both hands. Undoing knots always helped him calm down. It was also the first time he noticed how long the unhinged his hair was. No wonder he attracted ugly stares at school. Wait, if his hands were empty, where was his hero analysis page at? Looking around, in almost complete darkness, he knew he had dropped it in front of the dark-haired man. Not the best way to deliver the truth, to be told. Avoiding seeing his reaction would spare him a little if the man didn't ever come back. Why was he here anyways? Izuku slept the whole night in front of the door, guarding it, making sure the man would, under no circumstances, come in. Terribly afraid he was waiting outside for him. Terribly afraid of that being the last time he would see him. Aizawa waited. He really did. Guilt and rage building deep within. He shouldn't have stalked the kid. He knew that beforehand. But he was just so worried when he missed the drawing. And after he never picked up the jelly, he was so worried something had happened, and it was not him avoiding him. He was right to be worried too. It was the very first time he could see the kid in detail, with good lighting, and his whole body reacted to it. He was just trying to see if he was home, nothing more. But suddenly, his walk was distinguishable, and he ended up with the kid face to face, if only for 5 seconds. The pro couldn't believe he hadn't noticed it before. Yet the kid looked awful. At first sight when he opened the door, he reacted as if unaware of light, not one tiny glow coming from inside. Even so, that was not what shocked him. What really caught his attention was the hurt animal appearance he held. His hair, he was sure that was black, was actually a deep green, greasy, matted, and wild. His clothes were the same ones he wore a week ago, obviously old and dirty. His hands were red, scratchy. The whole kid was a mess. His eyes had huge bags for someone his age, and his eyes were just lacking in every kind of way. All of this screamed neglect in the best of scenarios. He didn't even want to think of the implications of a child opening the door to just about anyone. His husband would absolutely lose his mind when he tells him the kid used sign language. A kid so young, too. It was definitely something Quirk related. The kid must have a silent quirk to some degree, because he knew for sure the second he tried talking to the kid, completely killed his voice. Without a doubt of impression control of it. Considering the shock he was in, or maybe he didn't do it on purpose at all. He would have to look into it. One way or another, he knew that if he was reluctant to leave the matter alone, he sure as hell is not going to leave it now. The kid needed help. He just didn't know how to ask for it. Only God knows how long he has been in this state. Probably a long time, if he couldn't even bring himself to trust a hero. He had to save this kid, in any way he would allow him to. But first, he needed to cool down. Waiting for the kid to come outside was not the best idea, and he had to make a plan of action. From watching the house to see if he could locate his parents, and asking to see the public records of the property. That probably gave him at least a family name to go about. His heart already ached at the idea of horrible things he would uncover. The page in his hand filled him with a sense of duty. This kid held him on a pedestal he had yet to earn. Eraserhead had a few calls to make, and a kid to save. Save the kid! Save the kid! Okay, so, that was, what chapter was that? Okay, that was chapter 6, so I do feel like they're gonna, at least Izuku's gonna be in the home by chapter 10. Hopefully. Okay, so we're not gonna have to go through this whole, slow burn adoption. Alright, okay. Yes, I love that. Sometimes that happens in fanfiction, especially with, like, Izuku getting adopted. Specifically, it's always, like, older Izuku getting adopted. There is a slow burn of the adoption. Which, by the way, as I've mentioned before multiple times, I'm writing my own fanfiction where Izuku gets adopted as well. Not by Eraser Mike, no. By other people. But I was gonna have it be Eraser Mike, but then someone else said, like, oh, what if you do it like this? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Sure, we'll do that. We'll do that. We could do that. So, yeah, I'm doing that. But Like, Izuku gets adopted literally in chapter 3, I believe. Let me see. Yeah. Well, no, never mind. It's chapter 4. Chapter 4 is when the adoption process starts. Chapter 5 is when he fully gets adopted. So, yeah. Chapter 3 is when he needs parents. Chapter 3 is we're like, oh, well, damn, we need parents. But no, yeah. So I'm glad to see that in this fanfic, it is progressing as well. And we won't have to, like, do the slow burn adoption. Love that, love that, love that. Really, really do love that. I don't think you understand how much I appreciate that. Also, I very much enjoy the fact that Aizawa is now in the full known. He knows what's happening and he's gonna help Izuku. And I feel bad for Izuku because, like, he's always expecting the worst of people. And that's obviously a learned behavior. To expect the worst in people is a learned behavior, especially in kids. Like, I wish I was joking, like, kids normally do not expect the worst. Kids are very optimistic when they're little kids, right? They think something as small as their toy dropping and breaking is the end of the world, but then at the same time, something as small as, oh, we don't have enough food is not the end of the world, right? They put value in smaller things than in bigger things because, like, to them, their toy is their world, right? So, and they tend to see the better of people, right? They tend to think, so they're naive. Children are naive, right? Children are naive, right? So when you see a child who is super, like, untrusting and, you know, just super untrusting, believes that everything's gonna go wrong, believes the worst in people from the get-go, that's a learned behavior. That's a learned behavior. That might mean something normal for adults because we've lived enough to get betrayed, hurt, whatever, so we can be a little mistrusting of people, and that's good. That's a good behavior to have. You can't trust everybody you know, and everybody you just meet, but kids aren't like that, right? So to have a kid be like that, it speaks deeply about the type of conditions that kid grew up in. And I'm glad that he's gonna get the help he needs. And I'm just glad. He deserves it. He deserves it. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.